Hello, everyone, and welcome to the American Family Insurance DreamBank, where we believe in the transformative power of dreams. My name is Eric Lopez, and I am a dream curator here at DreamBank. And on behalf of our team, we're thrilled to have you with us. For those of you who have attended our in-person or virtual events in the past, welcome back. For those that are joining us for the first time, I'd love to take a moment to introduce you to DreamBank. Here at American Family Insurance, we believe communities are stronger and the future is brighter when people are actively pursuing their dreams. That's why we created DreamBank, an inspirational community destination and digital experience dedicated to dreamers everywhere. From our daily event series to immersive signature programs, there's something for every dreamer. Our offerings are designed to help you celebrate the dream journey, overcome obstacles, and stay motivated. In today's event, we have American Family's very own marketing manager, John Valadez, who will be interviewing José Hernández. As a young boy, José was always fascinated with stars and the night sky. Later in life, when he watched the US astronauts land on the moon, that was the moment that he knew he wanted to be an astronaut when he grew up. During this interview, we will learn all about the motivation and dedication that it took for José to achieve his dreams. Now, without further ado, I will go ahead and pass it over to you, John. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today as we kick off Hispanic Heritage Month 2022 here at DreamBank. I join you from Madison, Wisconsin at our Spark building here at DreamBank, where we make dreams come true. So we're here joining us today with none other than José Hernández. José Hernández, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, John. Pleasure to be here with you on this festive day with DreamBank and all the employees who are tuning in today.
Absolutely. We have our employees joining us, and then we have, our community of dreamers and DreamBank outside. So thank you for tuning in. And I just want to talk to you about today about your journey of dreaming fearlessly. We've had some amazing career. You've had an amazing career, and we want to definitely talk about what that looks like, what has transpired to where you are today, and just really talk about your journey. Now, you shared with us your childhood and what shaped it from being a migrant farm worker throughout California. Can you tell us a little bit more about the lessons you learned through that experience in particular?
Absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned that part, John, because that's a big part of my upbringing, and I think that's where I learned the value of hard work and developing a strong work ethic. Is because my parents used to travel as migrant farm workers from their home state in Mexico, Michoacan, and then they would travel three different places in California: Southern, Central, and Northern California, following the harvest. And of course, when they got married, they started off themselves, but as kids come along, then there was four of us. I'm the youngest of four, and where you were born, what country you were born in was dictated by what month you were born in, because 9 months we were in California, 3 months in Mexico. And I beat those odds because I was an August baby and peak of harvest in Northern California, our last stop. I have a brother born in September. He too was born in California, but then I have a brother and sister born in December. Guess where they were born? They were born back in Mexico. And so, growing up, that's all I knew, is working in the fields. My parents believed a lot in education. So Monday through Friday, we were in school, but come Saturdays and Sundays and 7 days a week during the summer, we were working hand in hand with my parents, picking any type of fruit or vegetable that was in season. And so you can imagine that while a lot of my friends who were kids back then loved summer vacation, we hated it because it meant we had to work a lot. But that work ethic is what instilled us in wanting to work hard and reach goals. And I'll tell you, the dream was conceived of me becoming an astronaut when I was like 10 years old, watching the very last Apollo mission, Apollo 17. You could imagine a 10-year-old boy watching Apollo 17 on a black and white TV. That was me. And when I saw that astronaut, Gene Cernan, when I heard the reporter and saw the reporter explain everything, still remember his name, Walter Cronkite, I I said, man, this is what I want to be. Especially I would go outside. It was December 1972. I remember it. Winter, kind of cold. I would go out, see the moon almost half full, almost full. And I would come back in and see the astronaut. And I said, de aquí soy yo. I want to be an astronaut. And that's how the dream was conceived as a kid, John.
I love it. And you talked about the value of hard work. I mean, that was a big part of I'm sure, your pursuit of that dream. You know, I think I can relate to that. You know, I have family also from Michoacan, and they would send me to Mexico for the summertime, similarly, because they wanted to instill that work ethic. So can you talk about, like, how did that impact, you know, you talked about ganas and just hard work, and how did that, like, really instill that dream to happen? How did you pursue that dream? I know you were inspired by that broadcast, but I mean, was there anything else behind that?
Oh, there was a lot behind that, John. You know, that December evening, the best thing I could have done was to share that dream with my father. I remember we were getting ready for bed that evening after that moonwalk, and my dad was walking in front of the hallway, darkened hallway. I'm walking right behind him, and I said, "Papi, papi," and he said, "Sí, mijo." My dad was kind of stern, and I said, "I know what I want to be when I grow up." And he said, "What's that, mijo?" As he keeps walking, and I said, "Un astronauta, an astronaut." Man, he stops cold. And remember, just keep the visual. You know, he's a tall man. He's always in a bad mood. Short on words, quick on action, if you know what I mean. Very good disciplinarian. He turns around, and as the light as he turns around, shines on his face, he tells me, "¿Quieres ser qué? You want to be what?" Mm-hmm. And usually I would get so scared, I would say nothing. No, I didn't say anything. I was so
nada, you know, it's kind of like
exactly,
that.
No. But I was so enthused. I even said it with an attitude. I said, "I want to be an astronaut." And he points to the kitchen and he says, "Vamos a la cocina. Let's go to the kitchen." And that's when I got scared, John, because only 3 things happened in the kitchen and 2 already happened. The first thing is my mom feeds us right after school and sits us on the kitchen table. And then she doesn't let us go until we do our homework, kind of like a bait and switch. You know, we eat, ya no se levanta until the homework's done, okay? And that was done already. Right. Second, my mom, at her insistence, sits us down at the same time to eat dinner. And that was done. The third thing, which hadn't happened, is, well, let's just say that was the tool shed. That's where they applied justice in their eyes, right? So when he said, "Vamos a la cocina," I was scared then, because I said, hey, the other 2 things already happened. So it's going to be the third option. And so I go in there real scared, and my dad wasn't mad. I sat down where I usually sit down to do my homework. He sat next to me, crossed his hands like that, very curious, and in very unarming tone said, "A ver, tell me about this. You want to be an astronaut." So very inviting and engaging at that point. Right. And so I tell him everything I learned from Walter Cronkite, the reporter that evening, that this was the last Apollo mission. They were retiring the Apollo fleet, but they were going to build a new space vehicle, and that we were sure to return back to the moon. And I told him, I want to be part of that. And, you know, my mom and dad only have a 3rd grade education, but my dad was wise enough to do 2 things there. The first thing he said is he validated my dream. And, you know, that's the power of empowerment, of letting people know that you believe in them. And he said, "Yo creo que sí puedes hacerlo. I think you can do it." Man, immediately I get excited. I said, "Wow, my dad thinks I could be an astronaut." Right. But he doesn't stop there. After that, he says, "If you're serious, mijo, you need to follow these 5 steps." And I said, "Dígame." He says, "Very simple, mijo." He said, "The first thing you want to do is you got to define your purpose in life. What does Jose want to be when he grows up?" And I yelled at him, "Astronaut." I figured 1 out of 5, I'm done. You know, I'm almost there.
No.
Yeah. As a 10-year-old, I said 1 out of 5, that was easy. What's the next
For
one?
10 years old. Okay, wow.
Exactly. Yeah. And then the second thing he says, you got to know your starting point, where you're coming from. And I looked down and I looked at our half peeling linoleum floor. We lived in a 2-bedroom dilapidated rental in the worst part of Stockton, California. And I told my dad, don't get mad at me, but I can't be any farther than this from the dream. Because he said, determine how far you are. I said, I can't be any farther than this. I said, well, I'm glad you know where you're at, because the third thing you got to do is you got to draw yourself a roadmap from where you know where you're at, and given by your smart remarks you do, to where you want to go. You have to know the way to your destination, to your goal. I said, draw yourself a map. I said, what's the fourth thing, Papa? Says, you're doing it already. You got to prepare yourself according to the challenge you selected. I said, and you picked the big one, son, so you know you got to go to college. And then he said, fifth and final, he points out the kitchen table. He says, you know that effort you put out working Saturdays and Sundays, 7 days a week during the summer with your mom, dad, and siblings, picking fruits and vegetables? I said, see. He pointed to my books on the kitchen table, said, you put that effort here. So you mix that up, mijo, and that's the recipe to succeed. And I'll tell you, John, I put that recipe to work immediately, and I still use it. It works to this day. It works. You use that recipe and you implement it, it will work for you. I just add one other ingredient, John, the sixth ingredient, and that is perseverance. That is never giving up on yourselves. Because that's the worst thing. We're usually our own worst enemies because we give up on ourselves. But the fact that my father empowered me, the fact that he believed me, the fact that I worked hard in the fields con las ganas, and I developed that work ethic, I never gave up on myself. NASA rejected me not once, not twice, 3 or 4 times. NASA rejected me 11 times, John. It wasn't until the 12th time that finally NASA invited me to be part of the 19th class of astronauts. So that's how it all started.
I love that. And you talk about the cultura, I think about, Hispanic Heritage Month and the cultura behind, sometimes you get told no, not only from your community, from your friends, sometimes from your family themselves, right? I feel like that's, I think, a big difference in hearing this conversation is that your dad, like you said, he took it upon himself to listen and to really hear you out and encourage you. How important do you think that is, for those that are listening out there they always hear no, or, I did this as a trade and I want you to do the same thing when you grow up. And how important was it for you to get that support from your family and your community?
It was very important. It was very important because, it's the power of empowerment, right? It's when you want to do something and you believe in yourself, that's one thing. Yeah. But, you're a 10-year-old and your father tells you you can do this, that's everything. Because you say, if my father says I can do this, by golly, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And pretty soon I found myself down the path, even as I grew up, saying, I'm going to do this because as a 10-year-old, my dad said I can do it. And I've convinced myself every step of the way. I said, hey, I got to go finish elementary school. I got to go to middle school, finish it. I got to go to high school, finish it and do good. Then I got to go to college, and then I got to get a job in a place that's going to help me become an astronaut. And that's what I did. I sort of followed that roadmap that my dad told me, right? He said, draw yourself a roadmap from where you know where you're at, which was in the worst part of Stockton, California, to where I want to be, which was NASA. And I drew it. Now, the danger that you do in all of this is that sometimes people look over the horizon. Mm-hmm. And they say, híjole, that's far away. I'm never going to reach it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you do that, you're right. You're not going to reach it because you're going to get overwhelmed.
Right.
So what you got to do is you got to focus on the small increments that's going to get you closer and closer to your goal. Yep. Don't focus on how much I have to do, but rather focus, what's the next step to get me closer? You knock that off. Okay, what's the next step to get me closer? And pretty soon, as you're looking down, working your butt off and hard, you're going to see that, hey, it's pretty close now. I'm almost there, kind of thing. And that's what
I love it. And I think, that's, we had a good conversation a couple of weeks ago, just you and I were chatting and you talked about, because we share similar stories, right? Like my mom, she finished, I think, second grade, my dad, third grade education. And we shared something that we had similar conversations where I told my dad, I want to, definitely do great things when I get older. And they said, look, if si no vas a la escuela, if you don't go to school, you're going to be doing what I'm doing. Right. And I think you said you had a similar conversation out in the field with your dad, if I remember correctly. And I think what I'm hearing you say is education is definitely a key part of that recipe that we just talked about. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah. Education and preparation and having a plan and executing. I have, I always do talks to, for example, multi-level sales companies, right? That they have people that do sales.
Right.
And I always tell them, it's very, it's kind of like, you got to put the work in, right? And I tell them, you're a salesperson. You want to make 5 sales this month, right?
Mm-hmm.
Say it's Amway or something like that. You want to make 5 sales this month, right? I always tell them, on the average, how many customers do you have to see to make a sale? What's the average? They say, oh, DS10.
Right.
Then I'll make a sale. Okay. I said, okay. How many sales do you want to make? 5. Okay. So how many people do you have to do your pitch to?
50 at least.
50?
Yeah.
There it is.
Right. That's it.
Your answer.
That's it.
It's right there.
Yeah.
Are you willing to put the work in?
Exactly.
Because if you're going to do 25 and expect 5 sales, it's not going to happen.
The math.
You got to put the work in, right?
Love it. I love it. And that essentially we're talking about hard work, ganas. Like we keep talking about that. And just really, you talked about bringing it back to the 11 times you applied for NASA and then to the 12th time. Talk to me about the process of becoming an astronaut. What kept you motivated during those challenging moments? I feel like you had to, we reach a point where dreamers want to dream, and like you said, they want to put in sometimes they don't want to put in the work, but you have to put in that work to get to where you want to be. And it seems like it's a far-reaching goal. I think you said the horizon, which I love. How did you, once you got there? I think the one thing that we face a lot is like imposter syndrome. We feel like, okay, I put in the work, puse las ganas, I'm here, but I feel como like ni de aquí ni de allá, right? Because sometimes you might be in your community like, hey, oh look, he's going to school, this and that. Why don't you join us? Why don't you be cool and come over here? And then you're over there like, well, I don't feel like I belong here. There's not people maybe that I assimilate with, right? Like they don't look like me, they don't talk like me. Like how did you like, because I feel like I come across that sometimes too. How did you overcome the imposter syndrome?
Well, I got that a lot in terms of, I felt the imposter syndrome a lot, and I handled it in different ways. For example, I'll give you the first time I experienced it, which was after leaving high school, graduating high school. I went and started school, University of the Pacific, a private university in my hometown. And, I decided to go there so I can be close to La Familia, right? Still live with the familia and all that. And so I went. I was a good student in high school, probably top 10 students in a graduating class of about 300 people. So I was up there. And I went straight to the 4-year college as a and I remember that freshman year, I had calculus, I had physics, I had Fortran programming, and a humanities class because I was starting engineering. And man, was I getting my butt kicked, especially in physics and calculus. And to the point, because I was a good student in high school, I wasn't used to being in the bottom tier of the students, and there I found myself doing very poorly. And that's when I found that not all public schools are created equal. Even though I performed well in my school, it didn't translate to performing well at a university level, which meant I wasn't as prepared as I should have been. And so then you start having the doubts with yourself and you say, gee, do I really belong here? You know, should I quit? Because maybe I don't have what it takes to be un ingeniero, an engineer. And you start thinking about that. And I'll tell you what allowed me to move forward was the fact that I would picture my mom's face and me having a conversation with her, telling her that I was going to drop out of college because I couldn't hack it. And imagining her disappointment because they worked so hard as migrant farm workers to give us this opportunity. And here I'm telling them I can't do it. And I told myself, I can't do that to them. I can't do that to them. There's got to be another way. And so I started forming study groups. I formed a study group where I had 2 kids smarter than me. Then it was me, and then someone who needed even more help than me, because that allowed me to learn from the smart kids. And then I would explain to the other kid to reinforce what I learned. And that helped a lot. I went to tutoring and I went to professors' office hours, and I was there. I said, I got to understand this. I got to understand. So pretty soon things started turning around, and, I graduated cum laude because I turned it around.
Right.
Now let's look at the career side. I go to Lawrence Livermore National Lab after going to graduate school, and you're sort of like in a, you come into the office, you got a meeting, and you got nothing but, Caucasians around you, and you're the only one that looks like yourself.
Right.
You're in this meeting deciding what needs to be done for a multi-million-dollar experiment, and you're saying, and you start questioning yourself, say, wow, do I really belong here, or should I be out there with the technicians? But
Wow.
you're an engineer. And then that's where I sort of stopped myself and I said, okay, I'm going to do a safety timeout. And I said, look, no one took the classes for me while I was in undergraduate and graduate school. No one took the test for me. I did it myself. I said, you graduate yourself and you got this job, and do you belong here? I not only said, yeah, but hell yeah. I earned this spot. And so now I'm going to voice my opinion and start working and being one of the team members, not with a chip on my shoulder, but more with confidence in saying, this is what I speak with. This is why I'm saying what I'm saying. Here's what I'm backing it up with.
I love that. And you said a safety timeout. I'm going to have to definitely, put that into
Safety timeout. Call it a mental safety timeout.
Okay. Mental safety timeout. I love that. Now you talked about the research, and I think this is probably one of the early works that you did, because I know you're famous obviously for being an astronaut with NASA and all the amazing accomplishments there. But there's one part that I think we talked about that in the past that you're very proud about, the research that you did, and it's being used even today to save some lives and things like that. Can you tell us about how that work happened and why is it important to you?
Yeah, I think a lot of people always say, or expect me to say that the proudest professional moment I had in my life is, hey, I get to wear this blue suit. I went to space, represented NASA in the US, but that's not it. That's not it. Then my most important or most proud professional moment came earlier in my career when I was working as an engineer at Lawrence Livermore National Lab. One of the first projects we worked on was developing an X-ray laser that was going to be deployed up in space as a defense shield. And this was when, but then the Soviet Union broke apart, Big Bad Wolf went away. And so grandiose projects like that one got canceled, rightfully so.
Sure.
We were a project of about 300 people. Everybody went and looked around for different jobs, except my boss and I. My boss and I stuck around because one of the things that I had developed was quantitative imaging techniques that we felt it was a tool that was being underutilized in industry. And so we convinced ourselves that what we had developed during the X-ray laser program had some application in some other problem. So in essence, we felt like we had an answer, but we didn't know what the question was. And so we stayed behind, and then we finally figured it out after doing research, that what we had was we had the capability to develop what's known as the first full field digital mammography system for the earlier detection of breast cancer. And this digitizes the images as opposed to using film, X-ray film, and it provided images which were much more clear. I spent a few months at University of California, San Francisco Medical Center learning how to read these mammograms. And I put all that into the computer, into an expert system, helped develop detection algorithms that detected microcalcifications, stellate lesions, circumscribed lesions, asymmetric glandular distortion, all possible precursors to early breast cancer. And so we got FDA approval. We partnered with a company, Fisher Imaging in Colorado, and they started building the first system. So I'm convinced this technology, John, has saved hundreds of thousands of lives, if not millions, since we designed it and came out with it. And so that's why I'm saying I'm most proud of this device than anything else in my career.
I love that. So one of the big reasons that we're very excited that you're here with us today is that we're celebrating obviously Hispanic Heritage Month. So transitioning a little bit to that, what's it like to be the first migrant, Mexican American to be an astronaut here at NASA? What does that feel like? What does that mean to you and to the community?
Well, it means a lot to me because, I just look back when I was 10 years old and I saw a man on TV walking on the moon, and I didn't even know who he was or what he was like. And yet he inspired me to become an astronaut. That was my inspiration. And so now I look at myself and I said, okay, I'm a person of color, first generation, and I go out and give conferences to schools, to businesses, and I try to reach as many people. And I tell myself, imagine if someone who I didn't even know inspired me. Imagine what good I can do for the small young Jose's that are around in our community that see someone that looks like them, that talks like them, that perhaps came from the same socioeconomic background where they're coming from, and hopefully I'm leaving them with the feeling that if he was able to do it, why can't I?
Right.
And so to me, it's more of an empowerment process which is what it means the world to me, because I know that simply by being me, empowering young kids to dream big, to literally and figuratively reach for the stars.
I love that. Now, I feel like you mentioned you had somebody in your life, you talked about having somebody that can see other Jose's and see you and aspire to be that, but you had a mentor yourself, right? You had somebody that looks like, inspired you to also, besides, of course, the when you saw that and the broadcast, but there was a mentor you had in the community at the time too. Who was that? And what did he mean to you?
Well, I had a lot of mentors in my life, and that's the one thing that's very important that I always tell people is, hey, you never take the lone wolf syndrome or saying, I can do this by myself. I mean, if help is being offered, you accept it and you take it. And so very simple. When I was in junior high, in high school, my senior year, I was listening to the radio and I heard, I still wanted to be an astronaut, but it was kind of like in the back of my head. I'm graduating high school, getting ready to go to college, and it was in the back of my head, and I'm sure it would have moved forward along the line. But then I just remember hearing news that just floored me, and I heard that the first Hispanic American got selected by NASA as an astronaut.
Wow.
And when I went to see who this person was, it was none other than Dr. Franklin Chang Diaz. Chang I couldn't relate to, but Diaz I certainly could.
Right.
And I said, who is this guy? And I started reading about him and seeing pictures, and he had brown skin like I did. Right. I listened to his interviews. He spoke English with an accent like I did. I learned about his story. He came from humble beginnings, just like I did. And he was of Costa Rican descent. He came from Costa Rica. And so that empowered me. I said, wow, NASA is selecting people of color. And if he can do it, why can't I? And that's when I said, I'm gonna, that thought of being an astronaut, came straight to the front of the brain, and it never left after that. And so I had people like that in the professional world. My boss, the one that asked me to stay behind to help him with this digital mammography project. I mean, that was the other one where he mentored me and then taught me to be a great engineer. It's so all along the way, there's people that help you along. Miss Young, who came and convinced my father and my mother to stop moving around and stay in one place. That was another great mentor. That's
right, because you guys were moving, like you said, throughout the seasons, but that stopped because of this teacher. Okay.
That's right. She came to our house and she said, you need to stop and stay in one place. And my dad wouldn't understand. It wasn't until she used the example of a tree. She said, imagine if you had a tree and you planted it. And my dad said, yeah. I said, now, if I ask you to plant it somewhere else in 3 months, but keep taking care of it, and then I ask you to do it again in 3 months, and you do it every 3 months, what happens to that tree? Even though you're feeding it and taking good care of it.
Yeah.
My dad said, well, you're going to stunt its growth. It's going to se va a quedar chico.
Yeah.
It's going to be weak because the roots aren't going deep. You got to leave it in one place. As soon as he said, you got to leave it in one place, he got caught. He said, oh, is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Miss Young said, yeah. So all these mentors that came along, I call them angels because they watched over me and helped me, move towards my goal. That's why I always say when someone offers to help you, don't be afraid to accept it, and don't be proud and say, hey, just accept it and see, and so that it can take you farther.
I love that. And it's just like las raíces, keeping your roots there. I love that. I love that so much. You talk about the mentors that you had throughout the way, and now we talk about, hey, the next generation, right? So, you have children yourself. We were both fathers, and you mentioned the importance of investing in their dreams, and the way that your dad did and your family did for you. How have you worked on passing that support to your own kids and inspiring them to dream bigger this thing?
Well, it's a little more difficult in the sense that I remember what motivated me was the fact that we didn't have toys, we didn't have new clothes, we couldn't go to McDonald's because we didn't have money, those type of things.
Arroz y frijoles, right?
yeah, exactly. And so I knew I wanted a better life, and that's what motivated me to do well in school, aside from this dream of wanting to become an astronaut. But then you grow up, and you graduate college, you're middle income, and now your kids have computers, they have cell phones, they even have cars, and you try to say, okay, there's a delicate balance between spoiling them and giving too much, as opposed to not giving them enough. And so I think it all becomes a matter of family values. It becomes a matter of, how you do as a parent. What values do you teach your kids? I was very adamant that my kids get into Boy Scouts. And both of my boys, they became Eagle Scouts, and I always talked about, my mom always talked about us going to college. So I took a page from her playbook, and I always talked to my kids about college, and I talked to them in a sense that it wasn't an option. It was sort of an expectation. Without me telling them, you have to go to college,
Right.
I would bring the conversation as that, oh, you'll see when you get in college what happens over here, or, the football games are great, college football games are great, and this and that. When they see it on TV, I saw, when you're in college, it's even better because you go in person, you see the games, stuff like that, where you're conditioning them to say, oh, okay, my dad expects me to go to college, my dad. So without telling them, because they rebel, right? If you say, no, a fuerzas vas a ir, you're going to go, then they do the opposite. So you do it in a way that it's an expectation, not a command.
I love that. I love that. I think that, and that sometimes, like, I think that's a great takeaway and lesson from this, because I think sometimes we, culturally or in the community, it's like, you ask your parents, like you said at the kitchen example, sometimes you're afraid to even like talk back or ask why. It's like, porque yo te dije, because I said so, right? And so it's more about like explaining them and talking them through it, and just really, giving them that opportunity to choose and continue to have that dream and being fearless about it. So I love that. And one phrase that you've talked about too, that you've talked about in different parts, is more than one star, more than one goal in life. Now, can you talk to me, can you share the importance of having those other dreams you pursued outside of being an astronaut? Talk to me about just, we talked about, the mammography, which, I mean, saved hundreds of thousands of lives. Talk about being an astronaut, but what's the importance of just, not just keeping to one path and diversifying a little bit? Talk to me about that.
Well, I think you should always have multiple goals, because you don't want to burn yourself out just working towards one goal, but rather you have other interests and you want to broaden a little bit and make life interesting, because if not, it becomes kind of like a squirrel in a cage, kind of, you're just running and going through the routines, trying to get closer, but yet you're not. So you got to balance everything. And certainly if you have a partner, you got to listen to what their dreams are too. My wife had a dream of opening up a Mexican restaurant, and so she did that, and I helped her. And in this flight suit, after flying a jet, T-38 jet, I would go in for what I would think would be lunch at her restaurant, to come to find out that the dishwasher did not show up. And guess who gets stuck washing dishes for an hour and a half? That's me. It's those type of things you gotta be able to accept and have that partnership, because that was her goals. That was her goal. And so it's not only having multiple goals, but also with the people that you're surrounded with and love, is supporting their goals as well.
I love that. I love that. What was one of the dishes? Now you're making me hungry a little bit. You have some tamales, some
mole, chicken mole is the best one. And she makes good enchiladas and sopes from Michoacán, corundas, all that good stuff.
Pair it up with some good wine, which I think you have a little business in the wine side, don't you? I want to say.
Oh yeah. Like you said, let's have multiple goals, right?
Right.
And I have a vineyard here in Northern California in Lodi, and I bought it to work with my father, because my father is 85, but he's still strong. It's that good farm work. He still gets on a tractor and helps me out. And so after mastering being able to manage a vineyard, I said, okay, what's my next goal in life? And the winery I sell the grapes to made the mistake of showing me their process of making wine. And I walked away saying, this isn't rocket science. I could make wine. And so I started making my own wine, and wouldn't you know it, John, it came out pretty good. And so it came out so good, I said, I'm gonna make my own wine. I'm gonna make a couple of reds and a white wine, and I'm gonna market it, make my own label. Started doing the research, got excited, and sure enough, that's how Tierra Luna Cellars was born. And now I make a red Zinfandel. I make a red blend, which is a concoction of 4 grapes, and then I also make a Sauvignon Blanc. And so it's all good wines. You go to the website tierralunacellars.com, and it's direct to consumer. So you order it there, and it'll arrive at your doorstep, delivered to someone who's over 21, has to sign for it, but it gets delivered to your house. So I encourage you to try it out.
I know what I'm going to do after this interview for sure. Go to check out that website. No, so I think when we talked about a little bit about, the diversification, right? So you have the vineyard, you had the restaurant, right? You have, you have other ventures too out there. I think
the books, I've authored 3 books, actually 4 books now. I've authored 4 books. The first one was Reaching for the Stars, and then it's in Spanish, El Cosechador de Estrellas. I've authored a children's illustrated bilingual book, The Boy Who Touched the Stars. And then I've authored a middle reader, From Farm Worker to Astronaut. And then I'm working on my 4th book, which is Reaching New Heights, that hopefully will be out pretty soon.
I love it. I feel like that's what, my point there is, like, you have the diversification, because I hear more and more nowadays, like, building that multi-generational, right, wealth, or you want to just kind of continue to build that for that legacy for your family. Like, how important is it to really just diversify beyond the one goal? So I think you touched on it already, but when do you decide to do that? How do you get inspired to do that, right? How do you make sure that you protect those dreams and anything that you might have thought, and like you said, in the back of your mind, to make sure you restore some of those dreams that you had in the past and just bring it all together? Do you just follow that recipe, or how did you go about diversifying?
Yeah, you follow the recipe, but you gotta be careful not to take on more than what you can chew, right? And so you gotta be honest with yourself and say, okay, you still gotta make time for the familia.
Right.
You gotta make sure that whatever activities you take on, you're gonna have the time and ability to take care of them, because you can be a participant of many and master of none, and that's not productive. You wanna make sure you master them and be in control of everything, and so that's what I try and do.
I love that. You talked about a little bit about reaching for the stars and giving back too, right? You have to have time for the familia, which is always, I think, at the core of our culture for sure. But then there's other ways to give back besides the familia, which is I know that at the Center for. How did you launch? Talk to me about how did you launch the Reaching for the Stars Foundation, and what is that project, that nonprofit mean to you?
Yeah, it's a great nonprofit. I started it back in 2006, 2007, right? Shortly after I got selected as an astronaut. When I went to Houston, go train, I remember I would come back to Stockton, my hometown, and you get a hometown hero's welcome. You get lots of excitement with the kids. So I knew when I got there, enthusiasm was up here, but then I go back to training and the enthusiasm sort of waned until I came back again. Then it went up, and I said, why can't we maintain this energy level even when I'm not here? I said, let's start a foundation, and I called it Reaching for the Stars. The José Hernández Reaching for the Stars Foundation, and you could find it under, if you go to Astro JH for José Hernández, astrojh.org, you'll see what we do. But we take a 3-prong approach to our programming. the first thing we do is we have a science class for fifth graders, where we invite from the local schools a one-day exploratorium type of event where we expose fifth graders to different STEM careers, science, technology, engineering, and math careers.
Going back to the education piece again that you talked about from the very beginning.
We have people from Google, Apple, we have people from Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. They all congregate and they all do their own spiel as to what they do for work and try to do a hands-on type of demonstration. And people say, well, why fifth graders? You bring over 1,000 fifth graders. Why fifth graders? Well, how old is a fifth grader? About 10 years old, usually. How old was I when I decided I want to be an astronaut? 10 years old. So it makes sense. We did that for a reason, the fifth graders. Then after that, we said, okay, how can we keep engaging them? And that's when I started, shortly after that, I started the Summer STEM Academy, where we partnered with my alma mater, University of the Pacific, and we invite students beginning in the 7th grade to spend 5 weeks on a college campus. And during the 5 weeks, we expose them to next year's math and science core curriculum so that when they go there, they're very well prepared. They've seen it during the 5 weeks of their summer. So we keep them engaged in STEM. And then the 7th graders come back as 8th graders. Then they come back as 9th graders, and they all the way through 12th grade. And our data shows that the kids that started in 7th and finished to 12th, 100% of them graduate high school, and 97% of them went on to college. And so it's a great program. We do that. And then the third tier of the program of the Reaching for the Stars Foundation is we give them scholarships and funding allowing. And what I want to start now is as they graduate, I want to give them a free a laptop. So I'm going to start looking for sponsors so that they can, so as when they graduate, they have a free laptop they could take to college. Because, if anything, they probably have a laptop, but it's probably a 4 or 5 year old laptop that's a clunker, and they're going to need something up to date to carry them through those first 4 years of college. And so that's my next step is making sure we arm them with a laptop.
I love that. I love that, Jose. I think that, here at AmFam, we always talk about inspire, protect, and restore your dreams, right? And I feel like, you're doing from the start to finish. It's not just a moment in their life, right, at 5th grade, but you can continue following them throughout the journey of inspiring that dream of like, what do you want to do? And then protecting it, like you said, whether it's through scholarships, and continue like, hey, I feel like I can't finish this out. You restore that by make sure you give them a laptop and keep that journey going. So I love that you're taking those approaches. And I feel like it's, again, kind of going back to that recipe and continue to, put your part in as a student, as those that put the ganas in, right? But at the same time, empowering them to do that. So now, in closing, I know here at DreamBank, we truly believe in the power of dreams. So we always like to end by asking for any insight that you have for our community. What advice do you have for someone who is pursuing their dream right now?
The advice is basically to don't give up, to persevere, to believe in yourself, and to utilize that 5-ingredient recipe that my father gave me. It's like, what is it that you want to accomplish in that dream, right? And then recognize how far you are from accomplishing it, because only then can you draw yourself a roadmap from where you're at that moment to where you want to go. And then now that you know what you want to do and where you want to go, now you got to make sure you have the tools to get you there. So you got to prepare yourself accordingly and get that training, get that schooling, get those tools to be able to get you there. And then the last one is next to last one is you work hard. You work, with a strong work ethic, and you never give up, which would be the last one, is never, ever give up on yourself. So, that is basically my dad's recipe plus perseverance is what I would tell them. I said, good for you that you already have the first ingredient like I did, defined. You have a goal, you have a dream. Okay, now let's get you there.
Se vale soñar, right? Se vale soñar. So, Jose, Mr. Hernandez, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you, talking to us about your journey. I think that
Thank you, John.
For those out there celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, I think really did really inspire us today, and I appreciate you joining us today. And again, we'll be reaching for the stars ourselves. So thanks again, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity to be talking to everybody, and I wish you guys the best of luck and happy Hispanic Heritage Month. And thanks again. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jose, for sharing this incredible story with us. And thank you, John, for conducting this interview with us today. To all who tuned in, thank you so much for joining us. And we look forward to continuing to learn, grow, and dream together. You can learn more about upcoming DreamBank events and content designed with your dreams in mind at amfam.com/DreamBank and by connecting with us on our social channels. On behalf of American Family Insurance and DreamBank, we look forward to hosting you again soon. And until then, keep dreaming fearlessly. Thank you.